Today I'm going to be talking about a project that my PhD project, in which I look into how to reduce unwanted movements in stroke survivors with the use of technology. So today I'm going to be talking about stroke. So first of all, what is a stroke? So a stroke occurs when one of the blood vessels leading to the brain gets blocked or ruptures, and because of the lack of blood supply, some of the brain functions are affected. And what happens is that with a lot of people after a stroke, they suffer from difficulty moving their arms or their legs. In my project, what I did is I focused on the arm, because a lot of people, even when they go to therapy after a stroke, they don't fully recover. So that got me started thinking about using other ways of trying to get these people better, and in this case, trying to use technology to do that. So I had three objectives in my project. The first one was to promote correct movements, not only looking at how many repetitions someone can do in therapy, but also looking at the quality of their movements. Then the second one is looking at the actual repetitions to try to get people to move more. And then the last one was to be able to share the results of my PhD back with the stroke survivors that contribute to my project. So the movement that I was looking at in my project was trunk movements. And you can see in that image that this is a person that had a stroke. We're asking him to to reach forward and grasp a cone. And instead of using only his arm, he's leaning forward with his trunk. And you can see that with the yellow arrows. What happens with those movements is that the more people are using their trunk, the less they use their arms. And what therapists are using at the moment is something called trunk restraint, which is basically strapping a person to a chair to avoid them from moving their trunk. So again, this got me thinking of maybe better ways of doing this instead of having to strap someone to a chair. So what I proposed to do in my project was to use motion tracking cameras. These are cameras that are now commercially available. They come with video game consoles, and you can use them to track how people are moving in space. So they were perfect for looking at how people were moving their trunk and their arms. And the second problem, the problem with the number of repetitions, is that, again, a lot of people go to therapy, but sometimes they don't even get the number of repetitions they need to recover. So what I did is that I had a look into what technology we could use to do this, and I ended up choosing to use robotic devices. And the reason for using robotic devices is that they were originally created to repeat functional tasks. So they're perfect for this type of rehabilitation movements, as long as we adapt the robotic devices to work with people. So that's what I did. And then the third objective I had was related to sharing the results, because a lot of the times as researchers, we do the studies, we do the different experiments, and we publish this in scientific journals, but we never go back and share the results with the people that were involved in the research. So what I did with the Public Scholars Initiative is that they supported me to go back to the research, to the recovery groups where I recruited people, and then I shared the results with them, and I did the same with therapists from a clinic. And I think this is a really important step, not only in these type of projects that are related to rehabilitation, but just in general for any PhD project, to be able to give back to community. And now specifically into what I actually did in the lab, is in the lab I had two robotic devices that people could hold on to. They could move their arms, and by moving their arms, they were playing a really simple game on a computer screen. And I had a motion tracking camera in front of them, so I could look at how much they were using their trunk. And the idea here was to try to reduce that movement to get them to use more of their arm. The task that they were playing was two cursors. Each cursor represented one of their hands. So they had to move their hands forward, and by moving their hands forward, they would move the cursors towards a target, and they were instructed to stay there for 1 second. And what happened is that because people are used to using their trunk to get there, we were giving them real-time information about their movements. So at the beginning, if they moved their arms, they would have the two cursors empty, but if they started leaning forward using their trunk, we would start filling up the cursors with red ink to indicate that they were doing an unwanted movement, and in the hopes that they would reduce it by seeing this information. And then the other option we had was to provide force feedback to the two robotic devices. So if people were leaning forward, they would feel that the two robotic devices would become stiffer or harder to move. And again, this was a cue to let them know, try not to use your trunk, lean back, and only use your arms. So The good news is that I completed the studies and the information actually worked. The information we were providing people to reduce their trunk movements worked, and the results were actually shared. Like in the last couple of months, I went back to the different recovery groups and I shared this information with all the people that participated in the study and with the therapists, and overall it was a success, I think. So I want to thank all my funding agencies, all our collaborators, and if you have any questions, yeah, we're going to have a Q&A session, but also my email is there if you want to send me an email. And thanks a lot for your time.